housekeeping information before we get started. Please ensure you are muted throughout the presentation unless you are speaking. Reminder for the QA team, please monitor the chat for questions you may be able to answer. And for all attendees, today's session is being recorded. Slides and webinar recordings will be uploaded to our VFC website in the link in here. And to be added to the Hawaii VFC program email list, please email your request to hawaiivfc@doh.hawaii.gov. In the subject line of the email, please write email list. For any questions during today's webinar, please use the chat to ask questions so the Hawaii VFC program subject matter experts can respond directly. We will be answering your questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, let me turn you over to our presenter today, Kealohi Corpus. She's one of our VFC quality assurance assessors. Go ahead, Kealohi.
Thanks, Lorraine. Hi, everyone. I'm Kealohi. Like Lorraine said, I'm one of the QA assessors. Today's objectives are, by the end of the presentation, you should be able to correctly identify and respond to both fridge and freezer temperature excursions. You'll be able to understand the significance of each step in the excursion process, and you'll be able to complete the temperature excursion process accurately and thoroughly in response to any out-of-range temperatures. Next slide. So what is a temperature excursion? Next slide, please. As defined in the CDC Vaccine Storage and Handling Toolkit, a temperature excursion is any temperature reading outside of the recommended ranges in the manufacturer's package insert. So you can find our CDC Vaccine Storage and Handling Toolkit at the link provided there. But the recommended temperature ranges for each unit, for your fridge, the range is 2 to 8 degrees Celsius or 36 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit. For your freezer, it is going to be negative 50 degrees Celsius to negative 15 degrees Celsius or negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit to positive 5 degrees Fahrenheit. And then for those of you who have an ultra cold unit, the range is negative 90 degrees Celsius to negative 60 degrees Celsius or negative 130 degrees Fahrenheit to negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit. VFC providers are required to identify and respond to any out-of-range temperature for any duration. It's found that are found in your VFC units. Some temperature excursions may seem minor, but we do require that you respond to each and every one that you come across. Next slide, please. So how to identify a temperature excursion. You are going to be completing daily temperature monitor checks. This is a requirement as a VFC provider. You're going to be checking the minimum and maximum temperatures once per workday, and then you check the current temperature twice each workday. You're going to document any out-of-range temperatures in the space indicated below on our temperature log, and then contact the Hawaii Department of Health VFC QA team. In this section right here, we often find providers don't write in this section, but it is there so that you can write if you see any temperatures during your checks that are out of range. Another great way to identify temperature excursions is to check your DDL data regularly. We can't really stress this enough, how important it is to just take a look at your DDL data, plug it in, or if you have other temperature monitoring devices, to log in and check, especially after long weekends where you weren't in office or during holiday breaks. Checking your DDL data will help you to identify and respond to temperature excursions much quicker as opposed to not checking. Also, a reminder, it is a requirement for the VFC program to check your DDL data every 2 weeks. And we are asking providers to download and save. And then when you submit your monthly temperature log, you can go ahead and submit your DDL data as well. It gives us, the screeners, a better insight on what's going on with your units, and we can advise you if anything looks a little funky. And then it's just easier to address any kind of excursion that we may come across. If you're unsure or not confident in identifying a temperature excursion, please contact the Hawaii Department of Health VFC program. You can shoot us an email at the email address listed there, or you can give us a call. We also had a webinar on temperature logs, just for your reference. Jennifer Dean went over info on DDLs, correctly filling out temperature logs, and some other good temperature log things. So you can find that at the link listed there, or you can find it on our VFC website. Next slide, please. So responding to temperature excursions, next. The excursion protocol has three main components. First, you're going to identify and notify. Then you're going to download and evaluate the details of the event. And then you're going to go ahead and contact the manufacturers and then contact the Hawaii Department of Health VFC QA team. That is our team. Next, please. So first, identifying and notifying. Immediately stop vaccinating with suspected vaccine following a temperature excursion. You're going to go ahead and separate and label those vaccine do not use awaiting guidance. You can separate them in a paper bag. We find that's the best method to make sure that things are not inadvertently used. If your unit has not returned to the appropriate temperature range for whatever reason, please move the vaccine to your backup unit or your emergency location as detailed in your facility's emergency response protocol, which should be found in your facility's vaccine management plan. So once you stop vaccinating using any suspected vaccine, you're going to go ahead and implement any kind of immediate corrective action that you might be able to do. For example, just shutting the door if it was left open, or if the seal didn't close correctly. If there was a power outage, you're going to resupply power, those things. For different excursion cases, you might not be able to take immediate corrective action. Your unit may be malfunctioning and you may need servicing, or you may need to purchase a new unit altogether. In situations like that, you will have to transport your vaccine either to a backup unit in your facility that's holding appropriate range, or you're going to go ahead and transport to your emergency location. And then you're going to notify the clinic VFC primary or backup coordinators and or your supervisor, just to ensure that everyone is aware that there has been a temperature excursion and the process has begun. Next slide, please. Next, you're going to download and evaluate the details of an excursion event, downloading and reviewing all DDL data. And then for providers, DDL data can refer to a number of different things. For AccuVax users, it's going to be that comprehensive report. For Senso Scientific users, we are asking for the 2-point monitoring data set as synonymous to DDL data. We're still trying to figure out Senso Scientific, honestly, but we have found that the 2-point monitoring is the best data set to take a look at for excursions. And then for the Berlinger fridge tag that we supply, we're going to ask that you download, plug it into your computer and download the data table and graphs, and then send that to us. If there are multiple excursions, manufacturers are going to utilize the cumulative exposure time and temperatures, which is why it's so important that you have that DDL data on hand once you start doing your contacting. Once you've done that, you're going to go ahead and determine the root cause of the temperature excursion and document all the steps you take to address the excursion event. And you can do that in the VFC troubleshooting log. You can see section 7 of our VFC toolkit. I've linked it there, or you can find it online on our VFC website. Again, if your unit has not returned to the appropriate range following the excursion, you're going to go ahead and implement your emergency response plan for transport to your backup location or your backup unit. In our toolkit in section 8, you can also see more details on vaccine transport and the correct way to transport vaccine in the event of an emergency. It is linked there, or you can find it online as well. Next slide, please. Final step is contacting the manufacturers and then contacting the Hawaii Department of Health VFC QA team. You're going to go ahead and give a call to all the applicable vaccine manufacturers for the decision on vaccine viability. You're going to need the data on hand, your inventory, and you're going to provide all of that information to them so that they can make a determination on whether your vaccine are safe to use. You're going to then contact the Hawaii Department of Health VFC QA team and submit all that documentation, including your DDL data, your troubleshooting log. We do want to see the manufacturer stability reports or any correspondence that you have with them. And then before we can clear the unit for use, we're going to need to see 5 days of stable temperature data following the date of the most recent excursion. You can go ahead and submit all that documentation to Hawaii VFC at doh.hawaii.gov. And then I've listed the numbers for our manufacturers that you can use below. Next slide, please. So completing the troubleshooting log, we found that sometimes can be a little bit tricky. For the most part, we need you to just fill in these 3 main parts. You're going to go ahead and describe what happened, what the temperatures were when you found it, how long your units were out of range, the inventory of the affected vaccine we'd like to see. We want to know if you currently have water bottles or frozen coolant packs in your unit, as this can sometimes affect the temperatures. And then we'd also like to know if there's any prior issues with the unit. That'll kind of give us an indication on whether or not the unit will probably need to be replaced. And then in the second area, the action taken, we want to know when the effective vaccines were placed in a proper storage conditions, whether that be your unit went back into range following the original excursion or you had to transport it elsewhere. We'd also like to know who was notified, any kind of supervisor, VFC coordinators, et cetera, and then what you intend to do to prevent similar problems from occurring if possible. And then finally, in the results section, we want to know what kind of guidance you got from the manufacturers. We want to know the viability determination of each vaccine, and then you can also include any case number or representative names that you spoke with at each manufacturer. Next one, please. Just some final reminders about the temperature excursion process. If you're ever unsure about a temperature excursion, please reach out to our QA team. We're all very readily available to answer any questions you might have and kind of give you guidance and advice on what might be going on. The manufacturer stability calculators should only be used to determine vaccine viability if you've been advised to use them by a member of the VFC quality assurance team, or if the excursion is a single one-time occurrence. The calculator should not be used for excursions with multiple occurrences or if there is a history of out-of-range temperature data. I know there was some confusion using the stability calculators, but because you aren't able to input multiple temperatures, multiple ranges, the stability calculators aren't really applicable for use. For an example, where you could use them would probably be maybe a one-time power outage that your unit experiences. That's something you could potentially use the calculators for, but we do ask that you give us a heads up and kind of we can address it further. And then we do need to see 5 days of stable within range temperature data before we can clear a unit for use. Please do not return your vaccine to the unit before we give the go-ahead, especially if you had to transport it to an emergency location. We really want to make sure that the unit stabilized and is suitable for VFC storage, just to minimize any kind of wastage or spoilage that might occur. And then once you've submitted all your excursion documents, please wait for guidance before you also resume vaccination with the affected vaccine. We want to kind of take a look at what the manufacturer said and then give you the go ahead. Once again, all temperature excursion documentation can be submitted to our main email listed there. And then please be sure to include your facility name, your PIN number, and the document type in the subject line. Next, please. And then here's the VFC QA team contact info. You can go ahead and email any one of us or all of us, and we can help as we see it. You can also give us a call at our main line, and then our main email address is listed there as well. Next one, please. So that'll complete this week's webinar. We want to thank you all for joining us, and we'd really appreciate if you complete our satisfaction survey. And then I'll take any questions if you have any. You can go ahead and unmute, or you can drop a question in the chat. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Today's session will also be posted in our VFC website. The link is in the chat. It will be under the educational opportunities. We will be available in here until 10 a.m. if you think about any questions later. And the post-webinar survey link is posted in the chat as well. In the survey, we ask that you let us know what other topics you want to talk about, if you have a preferred date and time, and how we could improve. We would really appreciate it.